closing argument competition. This year, we're so excited to rename the closing argument competition in honor of a fantastic Mercer lawyer named Manley Brown. Although we have recently lost Manley Brown, he was in fact one of our best examples of what it means to be a Mercer lawyer. He devoted over 50 years for advocating for clients and advancing the rule of law. And I know that all of the competitors in this year's competition really honored what it means to be a Mercer lawyer. And I know that Manley Brown would be so excited that we have named this competition in his honor. We have, I know, some remarks, and then we need to get to the main program, but I hope you join me in just a quick round of applause to everyone who has competed so far in this competition. And because our finalists have worked so hard, we're going to give them a round of applause right now for making it happen. I'm going to turn it over to our Advocacy Council to share a little bit more about this event.
Hi guys, welcome to the main event, the one we've all been waiting for. This is the final round of the 2026 Manley Brown Closing Argument Competition. As many of you know, my name is Hannah King. I'm the arbitration chair for the Mercer Advocacy Council. We started this competition 8 days ago with 74 competitors, and we're down to the final 2 advocates. Jaida Kelley and Delisha Valacheril. So let's give these 2 very deserving individuals a huge round of applause. And with that, one of our amazing co-editors, John.
Hey everyone, my name is John Roberts. I'm one of the closing argument co-editors for this year. We just want to take a minute to thank everyone who contributed to the success of the 2026 Manley Brown Closing Argument Competition, starting with Dean Snedden and the rest of the Dean Suites who helped us out throughout this competition with the logistics. Next, I want to take a moment to thank our Assistant Dean of Advocacy, Katie Powers, our Director of Advocacy, Lauren James, our Associate Director of Advocacy, Walker Lee, our MAC President, Joshua Wright, and our Mock Chair, Kendall White. Without all of them who helped us plan and accomplish our goals for this competition. We also want to give a special thank you to Judge Treadwell and all of our wonderful alumni and students who have volunteered their time to judge the rounds over the past week, and for being here today to judge our final round. And finally, again, I want to thank all of our 74 1L competitors who gave it their all over these past few weeks preparing for and competing in this competition. We were extremely impressed by everyone's effort and talent, and all of our competitors should be extremely proud of what they accomplished over the course of this competition. So I just want to give a round of applause to everybody involved. Before I turn it over to Gabby, I want to give a quick reminder that after the competition is over, we will have a reception at Fall Line starting at 7 to celebrate the conclusion of this competition. It's open to everyone, so I really hope to see all of you later tonight. And now I'll turn it over to Gabby.
Hey guys, so I am the 3rd co-editor this year. I'm Gabby, most of you know me. I judged a lot of you this weekend. So before our advocates begin with their closing arguments, we just want to give everyone a little bit of context about what exactly they're talking about. At this point in our fictional universe, we're at the end of the trial. It is the trial of the state of Mercer versus Joshua Wing. At this point, opening statements have been given, all witnesses have been called, and we are now at the end of the trial where closing arguments will be presented. The statement of the case that these advocates will be arguing about is as follows. The defendant, Joshua Wing, has been tried on the charges of robbery and felony murder. On the night of June 7, 2025, a home belonging to Cassandra Davis and Lauren Powers was broken into here in Mercer County at around 11 p.m. The suspect took Cassandra Davis's 2002 Louis Vuitton handbag. Before the suspect could flee, Cassandra walked downstairs and discovered the crime. She was shot in the chest and the suspect fled the home. Cassandra passed away hours later. There's no video footage of the suspect entering this home. Wing's car was seen on security cameras just a few streets over 10 minutes before this attack. And as the suspect fled the home, they dropped a handgun. A fingerprint was recovered from that handgun, and the fingerprint was a partial match to Joshua Wing. His DNA was also found in the home. Lead investigator, Detective Carbo, interrogated Joshua Wing on June 25th, 2025. He also interviewed Lauren Powers, Kendall Holloway, and Constance Sturgeon, who were both friends of Joshua Wing. The defendant has asserted his innocence, asserting that he was with his roommate, Constance Sturgeon, at the time of the crime at the Sizemore Tavern. We will now bring in our presiding judge and our jury, and then we will begin closing arguments.
Thank you. Be seated. We're here for the closing arguments. The jury has heard the evidence. Both parties have rested. And I call upon counsel for the state to give the opening closing argument. You may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. The state reserves 1 minute for rebuttal
Very well.
and a moment to set up the well.
You may.
May I proceed?
You may.
A desperate man, a designer bag, and a deadly choice. On June 7th, 2025 at 10 p.m., Miss Cassandra Davis just got done watching her last episode of 10 Things I Hate About You. She put away her wine, ate one last cookie, and then she went upstairs to her room to go to bed. What should have been just another relaxing night at home spent with her roommate turned into a tragedy. That's because just a couple miles away at Sizemore's Tavern, the defendant, Mr. Joshua Wing, was just handed his check for the food and drinks that he ordered. And what he saw shocked him. See, the numbers on that check far exceeded the amount of money he had in his wallet. He wasn't being offered a discount for the musical services that he supplied the tavern, and his rent, it was due that very next week. The defendant was desperate, so he made a deadly choice. He drove to Miss Davis's home, took her Louis Vuitton handbag, and then he shot Miss Davis, causing her death. Members of the jury, that's why we're here today. Because the defendant's actions constitute what we call robbery and felony murder. And as the prosecution in today's case, we have the burden to prove to you just one thing. And it's only one thing because the prosecution and the defense, we actually agree on a lot. See, we agree. A robbery and a felony murder occurred that night. We agree. Someone, through the use of force or fear, took Miss Davis's Louis Vuitton bag. That someone then shot Miss Davis, and that it was that gunshot that caused her death. We agree on all of that. So the only thing left that we had to prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, was that someone was the defendant. Now, beyond a reasonable doubt. That doesn't mean beyond or to the exclusion of any and all doubt. It has to be doubt based on the testimony you heard and the evidence that you saw. But members of the jury, when you look back at that testimony and that evidence, what you're going to see is that we met our burden. We met that burden by showing you three things: a desperate man, a designer bag, and a deadly choice. So let's take those each one by one. Starting with that desperate man. See, because in order for the defendant to have committed this crime, he needed some pretty specific knowledge. He needed to know where Miss Davis lived and where she kept her Louis Vuitton bag, both of which the defendant had extensive knowledge of. You heard today that he had been to her house time and time before. So often, in fact, he had memorized the exact spot she left her Louis Vuitton bag every night. And it was right there in her living room, across from her glass door. So what did he do with that knowledge? Well, he got in his car and he drove to Miss Davis's home. And we know it was the defendant's car because of that testimony you heard from Detective Carbo. See, the detective told you that Miss Davis's neighbor saw the suspect that night fleeing in a yellow car away from the scene. His description of the vehicle, it matches what we know the defendant's car looks like: a yellow 2018 Fiat 500. Now, in the defendant's desperate bid to get away from that scene, he left something behind. And there was that gun that you heard so much about today. And after a forensic analysis was performed on this gun, detectives found a match for the defendant's fingerprint right on the handle. But I can understand if a 55% match isn't enough to convince you. And that's why we gave you something within 100% match for the defendant's DNA. And it was all over the scene of the crime. But it's not only forensic evidence that places the defendant there. It's also eyewitness testimony. See, because when Miss Powers heard her roommate scream, she rushed down those stairs, and what she saw was the defendant. She'd known him for a long time. And they had been dating for nearly half a year, so she knew even in that split second, even with the nearest light source several yards away, that the man standing in front of her at 5'10", a medium build, wearing his signature black hoodie that he'd owned for years, she knew that desperate man was the defendant. Second, that designer bag. Because see, the defendant, he didn't do this for nothing. Every witness who took the stand today told you the defendant was financially desperate. After he quit his job to pursue music, he was in a financial flood. He had no money. And so he took on a side gig, buying and reselling designer bags. And you heard his game plan. He would scam elderly women for pennies on the dollar for their prized possessions, and then he'd resell them for thousands. It's the exact thing he tried with Miss Davis, offering her just $1,000 to make a $49,000 profit on her bag, and when she refused, members of the jury, he didn't let it go. And we know he didn't because of the defendant's own words. He told you, I get whatever I want, whenever I want. In that bag, it was the steal of a lifetime. Not of the week, not of the month, not of the year, of a lifetime. So what did the defendant do? Well, that brings us to that third point, a deadly choice. Because see, both parties agree. On June 7th, after the defendant was handed his check at Sizemore's Tavern, he fled to his home, a drive that only took him 4 minutes. And when he got there, he went up his stairs, into his room, and he opened his safe. And we know exactly what's in that safe. We heard it from the defendant's own roommate. That's where he keeps his money, and that's where he keeps his guns. So the defendant, he had two choices. He could grab that money, go back to Sizemore's Tavern, pay his tab, and then struggle to make ends meet and pay his rent, do that very next week. Or he could grab his gun, take Miss Davis's Louis Vuitton bag, and be set with the steal of a lifetime. Members of the jury, he took both. And then he drove to Miss Davis's home, a drive we know only takes him about 4 minutes, putting him right within that window of opportunity we were told by Miss Powers, between 11 and 11:15. And when he got to that home, he peered through Miss Davis's glass door. And despite any knowledge Mr. Wing might have had that Miss Davis wasn't going to be home, and that she was going to leave and take her Louis Vuitton bag with her, when he peered through those glass doors, he saw this bag. And so we know what he did next. He shattered that glass door and he grabbed this bag. And the defendant told you himself what this job was supposed to be. A simple grab and go. But then he heard footsteps. But then he panicked. But then he fired his gun. And now, Miss Cassandra Davis is dead. A desperate man, a designer bag, and a deadly choice. And now, members of the jury, you have an opportunity to make a choice of your own. In a moment, you're going to be provided jury instruction forms. And that form, it's going to ask you 2 questions, but it can really be simplified to just this. If you believe that desperate man we've been talking about for this entire trial is the defendant, then you must find him guilty. If you believe he made a deadly choice for that designer bag, then you must find him guilty. If you believe in rendering a verdict, and that speaks the truth to the evidence and the testimony you heard today, and that brings justice to Ms. Cassandra Davis, we ask that you find the defendant guilty. Thank you.
Thank you. The defendant may proceed with his closing argument.
Your Honor, the defense requests time to set up the well.
Certainly.
Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury, this case is about motive, means, and manipulation. And when you lay the facts side by side, there's only one guilty party, Kendall Holloway. If I saw Cassandra again, I'd let her have it. That wasn't a joke. That wasn't a figure of speech. That was a threat rooted in anger, jealousy, and greed. Kendall was the only one who, after hearing Cassandra's name, stormed out of Sizemore Tavern that night. Kendall is the only one who disappeared during the time of the murder. Kendall is the only one who had unexplained DNA evidence found on the gun used to kill Cassandra. Motive, means, manipulation. Now, the events of June 7th were months in the making. As you heard in everyone's testimony today, it's consistent with the fact that Kendall hated Cassandra. Constance told you about how Kendall's quick to anger and how she loves to hold a grudge. Lauren heard Kendall call Cassandra a spoiled brat who doesn't deserve this bag. Kendall's probably thinking, ugh, this is so unfair. Why does she get to fawn around this nice purse and she didn't even buy it? Members of the jury, these are the signs of Kendall's resentment growing, deepening, and finally erupting. Now, Constance could sense the energy change that night as soon as Cassandra's name was brought up. Kendall was seething to the point that she couldn't take it anymore, and she stormed out, not before stating her final threat. If I saw Cassandra again, I'd let her have it. Kendall left the bar angry and alone. She was wearing a dark hoodie, consistent with the suspect description given after the murder. No one saw her that night. No one heard from her. She disappeared until the next morning. The next morning, Cassandra is found murdered. Members of the jury, this is a timeline consistent with the fact that Kendall Holloway is the only guilty party in this case. Now, Kendall knew in order to pull this off, she would need the perfect patsy. And who better than the defendant Josh, an aspiring entrepreneur who had an interest in designer bags and bought and resold guns. Kendall knew that by manipulating Josh's roommate, Constance, and getting one of Josh's guns from his safe, she had come up with a foolproof plan. Kendall and Constance were thick as thieves. She would have done anything Kendall asked her to. Now that Kendall had the motive, means, and manipulation, she set her plan into motion. But Kendall made a fatal mistake that night. She dropped the gun. The gun with her DNA evidence on it. The gun that tells the story of what really happened that night. Now, the state's Detective Carbo told you how to understand this forensic report. He said that just because DNA comes back doesn't mean we found the killer. And that makes sense. Josh's sample in this report is partial and degraded. That means you cannot rely on this report to say with absolute certainty when it was placed, how it was placed, or if this is a sample that fired the gun that killed Cassandra. Now, this report is consistent with what we already know, which is that at some point, Josh handled this gun. And that makes sense, given his reselling background. What doesn't make sense is why Kendall's DNA is found on this report. Constance, the unidentified female in this report, gave Kendall the gun which she used to kill Cassandra. The bag was found abandoned with no DNA found on it. That means the person who did this didn't care about the bag. They cared about hurting Cassandra. Now, the DNA does not point to Josh. The DNA points to the only person who had the motive, means, and manipulation, Kendall. Members of the jury, this is an all or nothing case. That means the prosecution has to prove all elements of robbery and felony murder beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt means that you are firmly convinced. If you have any reasonable doubt, then that means the state has failed to meet their burden, which is the highest in our criminal justice system. For the robbery, the state must prove that Josh had the necessary intent to break into Cassandra's home and steal her bag. Only then do we get to felony murder. Now, for felony murder, there's no specific intent required. All that's needed is that someone died during the commission of this crime. That means the state must prove that Josh had the necessary intent to rob Cassandra, because without robbery, there's no felony murder, and the state's case falls apart. Now, the law does not require the burden of proof to shift to the defense. That stays at the prosecution table. And in this case, the prosecution has failed to meet their burden because they cannot say beyond a reasonable doubt Josh had the motive, means, and manipulation to commit this crime. Now, you heard in everyone's testimony today, not one person can give a reason as to why Josh would want to hurt Cassandra. After all, they were friends. Cass was one of the few people in Josh's life that respected his music career, and Josh appreciated her. In Josh's criminal history, there's no mention of guns, no mention of robbery, no mention of murder, nothing at what the state is alleging. All that's in here is a small shoplifting charge and a silly senior prank. Nothing in this report shows that Josh had the necessary intent to rob and kill Cassandra. Forget apples to oranges. Members of the jury, the prosecution is trying to get you to equate petty theft and property damage to felony murder and robbery. Now, Josh told you where he was that night. He said he left the bar around 11 p.m. and came back around 11:05. This map is consistent with that timeline because from Josh's house to Sizemore Tavern, it's about a 5-minute drive. Given the time of night, probably less. The patrons at the Sizemore and the bar owner all saw Josh come back. They are consistent with his timeline. Now, the state would have you rely on an inconsistent timeline with the evidence based on a dark, low-resolution photo and the testimony of a drunk roommate who had no recollection of the night. Members of the jury, The state cannot tell you who was driving this car that night. They cannot tell you which direction it was going. They can't even tell you which street it was parked on. The prosecution would have you rely on this guesswork to convict Josh of murder and robbery. But if you cannot answer these basic questions, then you cannot say beyond a reasonable doubt. Now finally, we get to the gun, which the state claims to be their most damning piece of evidence. But really, it's the crux of our case as a prosecution, because it shows you what really happened that night. Josh didn't manipulate anyone. Instead, he was manipulated. Kendall manipulated Constance into getting this gun. Kendall manipulated everyone into thinking Josh did this based off his love of designer bags and his reselling gun background. Members of the jury, if Josh is the one that pulled the trigger, why is Kendall's DNA found on the murder weapon? Unless Kendall is the one who robbed and killed Cassandra. Now, the state has failed to meet their burden today because they cannot say beyond a reasonable doubt Josh had the necessary motive, means, and manipulation. All they've proven today is that Josh liked designer bags. Members of the jury, interest is not intent. Now, we all know that Josh did not have the motive, means, or manipulation. We know who did: Kendall Holloway. I ask that you ensure justice is served today by finding the defendant, Joshua Wing, not guilty. Thank you.
State may rebut.
Yes, Your Honor. Means, motive, manipulation. The defense asked you to focus on 3 more things, but no matter what way you cut it, we're all talking about the same man here, and it's the defendant. He was the only desperate man with the means to do this, as he had the knowledge and the car to get to the scene. And we have the forensic evidence and the eyewitness testimony to place him there. He was the only one with the motive for that designer bag, as felony murder doesn't require an intent to kill, but the initial felony, the robbery, he needed that money. And the defendant was the only man who had a history of manipulating others to get whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, and when that didn't work, he was the only one willing to do a deadly choice for the steal of a lifetime. Means, motive, manipulation, a desperate man, a designer bag, a deadly choice, no matter what way you look at it. We're all talking about one man. We ask that you find that one man, the defendant, guilty. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard the evidence. You have the charge of the court. You may retire to begin your deliberations, and we'll be in recess until we hear from the jury.
Once they tally their ballots, y'all can roll.
You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, we do not yet have a verdict, but we do have some comments. We'll begin with the jury.
Hi, I'm Maddie. First of all, I want to say that you both did fantastic. I know that your nerves were probably shot, but you guys didn't show it. You guys both did absolutely fantastic. I'm just going to give one comment to each of you so that we can do this efficiently. State, I thought that you had great eye contact. Like, I didn't even want to look down and take notes because I was like, no, I have to keep looking at her in the eyes. Because it was just wonderful, wonderful inflection. And for the defense, I thought that your use of all of the evidence was really great. And you were drawing us in with the evidence. And once again, I felt like I didn't even want to look down and write. I wanted to look at what you were presenting to us. So, fantastic job, both of you.
Hi, I'm Tessa. I'll just echo what Maddie said. Y'all were both excellent. For the state, I loved your rebuttal. I thought the way you were so responsive was really excellent. And for the defense, I think you did a great job holding up each piece of evidence and telling us exactly what we needed to know and why we couldn't trust it. So.
And can I interrupt for a moment and ask both of you to give your last names and what you do, please?
Oh, sure. I'm Tessa Sizemore, and I actually clerk for Judge Trepel.
I'm Maddie Winburn, and I'm a 2L.
You won this competition last year.
Hey y'all, I'm Willie Sizemore. I'm in a commercial litigation group at James Bates, Brandon Groover in the Athens office. I thought you all did an excellent job. Every day I'm proud to be a Mercer Bear, but today I'm especially proud to be a Mercer Bear. I'm really happy to be back here today. For the prosecution, I thought you had a good command of the fundamentals as far as your placement in the courtroom and your use of different rhetorical tools in your closing. And then for the defense, you had great pronunciation, clarity, and tone.
My name is Joshua Wright. I am a 3L, and I did this competition 2 years ago. I just want to say I was completely amazed. I thought both of you guys did a wonderful job. Both of you, I would be happy to be trial partners any day. I think anyone in MAC today could say that I saw some flickers in y'all's arguments of skills that some of our advanced advocates are learning. So y'all both did a great job, and I'm very happy to be here, and I'm glad to be here.
Afternoon, y'all. I'm Mark Wheeler. I'm a civil litigator, also with James Bates, Brandon Groover. I work in our Macon office. I did this competition 3 years ago, and I had nowhere near the skill set that you two demonstrated here today. And if you haven't already, take a deep breath, because that was a phenomenal performance from both of you. Just 1 point for each of you. State, phenomenal use of purposeful movement throughout the well and commanding our attention throughout the entire time. I'll echo what they said. It was hard to take notes because I wanted just to sit there and watch you the entire time. For our defense, I loved your incorporation of the elements for both charges because you were able to put them all in front of us and able to poke holes in all of those, and that way you were able to take down their burden. So well done there.
I'm Bill Underwood. I'll be teaching here this fall. I want to congratulate both of you on advancing to the championship of this highly competitive competition. I think it speaks well of you that you've made it to this round. I think the most important things during closing argument are to tell a powerful story based on the evidence, a clear and powerful story based on the evidence, and to use the charge effectively. And I think both of you have been well instructed and did a good job, so congratulations.
I'm Karen Sutton, I'm Dean, and I'm an estate planner, so this is really not my jam. I can really say to both of you, congratulations, and also thank you. Thank you for devoting the time to do so well in this competition. I could tell that both of you had really thought very carefully about the law and the facts, and you thought not only about the content, what a lot of us do, but you thought about the presentation in a compelling way. I thought you both sounded very authentic. You didn't let the other person's argument kind of dominate where you wanted to go. You thought of said it in a very compelling and thoughtful way. So it was just a delight to be able to see this final round, so thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, it appears we do now have the verdict of the jury, and the winner of the 2026 Manley Brown closing argument competition is Jaida Kelley. I will add that it was a tough deliberation and the jury almost deadlocked, I think. It was close.
And then perhaps just to kind of wrap it up, Judge Trowell, if you could share with us a little bit about the importance of the name that this competition now bears of Manley Brown, because I think you would agree with me that we see Manley's legacy all the time at the law school, and we especially have seen it in this final round.
Well, thank you, Dean, and that's well put. I would have to say first, my gosh, what great closing arguments. Both of you, and I mean what I say about it being a close decision. I know it was for me, and as I checked the many boxes we had to check and scored how we did. So congratulations to both of you. It was excellent. Yes, Manley Brown is a mentor, was a mentor to hundreds of Mercer students and young trial lawyers. It's particularly important, I think, that this competition is named after him, because as good as he was at everything he did as a trial lawyer, he was at his best in his closing arguments. He was a true fire and brimstone lawyer when he needed to be. I saw some of the things that I learned from him today, from both of you. I know that Manley, he died a couple of years ago. He was a mentor to me. He taught trial practice here for more years than I can remember right now, 20, maybe close to 30 years. I know he would be happy to know that Dean Powers is continuing in the tradition of teaching students the important skills they need to be successful litigators. So it is fitting that this competition is named after Manley, and I'm honored to be here tonight to serve the minor role I did. But again, congratulations to both of you.